This is minienv, a web-based tool for running sample applications that are built on top of Docker Compose. In this case, I'm running minienv in an environment where I've whitelisted a handful of GitHub projects that you can run, but you can also run minienv in a way where you can type in any GitHub project as long as it's a Docker Compose environment. So here I can quickly select from a handful of sample applications. I'll start with this RethinkDB Node.js CRUD application and then just click Run. What this is doing behind the scenes is creating a container inside Kubernetes that is essentially downloading this repo from GitHub and running Docker Compose. It takes a minute or two to start, but when it does, you'll see a few tabs show up. And you'll also see a log file. This is essentially the log file coming from Docker Compose. So here's the log. So what we can see is this Node.js application is basically installing all the dependencies from npm. You can also see this edit tab showed up and this RethinkDB tab showed up. So if I look at this edit tab, this gives me the ability to actually edit files in the sample application. So you can see here are the files in the sample application. The RethinkDB tab, this is the actual RethinkDB database that is running as part of the sample application. So this is just running inside its own container. Now this is my personal RethinkDB, so any changes I make to it, only I will see. No one else can see or make changes to my RethinkDB. And then you'll notice this new tab showed up, which is called CRUD. This is the sample application. So with this sample application, we can create games. So we can create a game with player 1, we'll just say Sally, and player 2, I'll say Joey, and I'll say the game is ready. So you can see we created a game, and if I go to RethinkDB, I can go to my Data Explorer, I can get my database, get my table called games, and I can see the games that were created. And you can see I've created a game called Sally and Joey and it's ready. And then I can go back here and I can update then let's just delete this game for now. And if I go back to RethinkDB, you can see this is gone. And if I go look at my source code, you can actually walk through the source code and see how that's all happening. And in fact, you can make changes to the source code. So you can see I have a few other ones here. Let's try this other one. This is a Spark notebook, or a Jupyter notebook that's running Apache Spark. So minienv can essentially run any Docker Compose environment. So you can see my edit tab showed up. And if I go look there, you can see in this particular case, this is a notebook that analyzes the Back to the Future transcript. So there's really not a lot of source code here. But we're showing the data files that we're working with, and we're allowing you to edit the data files if you want to. You go back here, you can see now everything is started up, and I have two more tabs, Python and Scala. So this sample application has a Python notebook and actually has the same exact notebook in Scala. So we've automatically loaded this notebook. You can see that it's running Python 3 and connecting to a Spark 2.1.1 instance. So I can quickly run through this notebook. And you can see I'm loading the Back to the Future transcript that I just showed you in the Edit tab. And here we just do some analysis on the file. And basically this notebook just finds like the most common words spoken by every character in the Back to the Future movie. While that's running, I can go to the Scala tab and I can do the same thing. You can see the Scala code for the notebook, and we could run through that as well. I want to quickly show you the GitHub repos for the two sample applications we just ran inside minienv. And I want to show you what changes, what specific changes were made to run inside minienv. So in this case, we're looking at the RethinkDB Node.js CRUD example. So the source code for this example is under the source app folder. There's nothing inside this folder that is specific to minienv. You can see our package.json file. Again, there's nothing specific to minienv in here. These are just the Node.js dependencies. If we go back to app and you look at server.js, I mean, this is our source code. There's nothing specific to minienv in here. Now if I go back to the root of my project, you'll see the Docker Compose file. So there was a little effort made to make this tutorial available to be run inside Docker Compose. If we look at the Docker Compose file, we can see we're running two containers. One is RethinkDB. So there's nothing special that we're doing here. We're just running a RethinkDB container. And then the other is our web container, which is running a Node image. So now here's where we do some special stuff. We have a startup folder in order to start up the Node.js application, and then we're mapping our source folder in our local machine to the source folder inside the container. And then there is one specific thing to minienv here, which is this npm proxy cache. So minienv includes an npm proxy cache to help speed up the download of dependencies. And you can see our command is the specific startup command. But for the most part, there's really very little minienv specific functionality here. If we look at our startup command, you can see we do some things with the npm proxy cache. Again, this is somewhat specific to minienv, but it doesn't actually require minienv. If you have an npm proxy cache, you can run the sample application and use that cache. But what we do here is we install our dependencies. We install NodeMon, which allows us to automatically reload the Node.js application when there are any kind of changes. And then finally, there is this minienv JSON file. Now this is purely informational. This tells minienv where the root of the source is, or if you wanted to hide the source, you could also hide the source. It also gives us some names for the tabs that we're going to show inside minienv. So again, really just informational, and this is not required. If this minienv file wasn't here, or if there was nothing specific to minienv in this tutorial, you could still run it inside minienv, since it is a Docker Compose environment. So this is the GitHub repo for the second sample application that I showed you, which is a Jupyter notebook connecting to Apache Spark. So here you can see we have our data folder that I showed you before that has our Back to the Future transcript. We have our notebooks folder, which contains the two notebooks, our Python and our Scala notebook. If we look at our Docker Compose file, it's pretty straightforward. We're running a single container, and we're mapping our local data directory to a directory inside the container, as well as our local notebooks directory to a directory inside the container. Now this is running a Docker container that I built. That Docker container runs Spark 211 and also sets up the Jupyter kernels that are required to run Python as well as Scala. And the only thing specific to minienv in this particular repo, again, is the minienv.json file. And again, this is optional. It just tells minienv where the root source folder is, as well as what to name the tabs, and also what path to go to in the tab when loading the tab. So we go directly to the two notebooks with the two tabs. So hopefully you can see the potential of a platform like minienv. We're really trying to make it super simple to deliver sample applications to developers without requiring them to download and install anything on their machines. They can run the entire sample application from a web browser, and not just simple applications that are using web-based or front-end technologies, but applications that use backend databases or other backend services. And we're able to do that by piggybacking on top of Docker Compose, which we think is a really great tool for delivering sample applications. So you can learn more at minienv.com. This is officially the 0.1 release with support for running minienv on top of Kubernetes. We're also looking at supporting Docker Swarm. Minienv is completely open source, so you can find the source code at github.com/minienv. There's still a lot of work to do on documenting and things like that, but hopefully we'll get there soon.